didn't want to be around us. Marks and Glickman arranged for a showdown with Bill in Fort Wayne. They all flew in along with our lawyer, Paul Marshall. We booked the conference room at the Holiday Inn. We all sat around and listened to a litany of things that Bill was doing poorly. All these Judases like Howard Marks, Bill brought in, and Paul Marshall, who was originally Bill's lawyer. Everyone was reaming him, and Bill just sat there and took him. Of course, Gene and Paul realized that Bill was being hung, so they jumped in and made sure the rug got pulled extra hard. They started in with how much more Bill was making than us, how Bill was going to have to give it up or get out, how Gene and Paul agreed with Marks and Glickman and Marshall. Ace and I were quiet, but I couldn't keep still any longer. I don't agree at fucking all, I piped up. Maybe some of this is true, but how can all of you forget how we got here in the first place? You forget whose credit card we left off. Boy, it's easy to forget now that we're all sitting here nice and fat and rich. I looked over to Glickman and Marks. Life is nice. That we made you motherfuckers so wealthy and now you're telling the gun. Who started all this, which way the door is? If he goes out that door, I'm fucking right behind him because I'll win this man. If Bill goes, I go. This time I really meant it. Bill looked at me and smiled. What did I care? I was dying to leave the band. I figured that if I went with him, he'd manage me and get me a band. Regardless, he deserved my loyalty. And Ace said pretty much the same thing. He suggested that we renegotiate some of Bill's fees and percentages, and Bill agreed to do that. Marks and the others had probably planned for this all along, because they opened up a new book and started reeling off proposed changes to Bill's contract. It was sad because now they were dictating to Bill what his job would be. We resumed the tour, and it was torture. Every night, despite my drug abuse, despite my desire to be anywhere else than on that stage, the high point of the show was my drum solo. I'd go crazy, taking out all my frustrations on those skids. And I'd end up hitting a huge Chinese gong. The audiences would go wild. But during the solo, the other three would take a break in a special dressing room constructed under the stage and laugh and make fun of my solo. They were from college. Once in a while Ace would compliment me on my solos, but never once did those other two fucks say, "You were really hot tonight." But why should I expect them to give me a compliment when they never had in the past? I was out of control. So I began to sabotage the show. I was wrong. I was an asshole. Cocaine does not allow you to make good decisions. I certainly should never have taken my troubles out on the fans, I know that now. But cocaine is an evil drug. I wouldn't dream of staying at a Four Seasons hotel now and throwing the TV through the window. I couldn't fathom picking up a lamp in the room and smashing it into the mirror. When you're addicted to drugs, you do bad things. In retrospect, bringing Deb on tour was a big mistake. By then we were fighting. In the middle of the night you'd hear glass breaking and furniture being overturned. She was a drama queen, so she'd rush out into the hallway half naked and everyone would come out to get a look, of course. "He's going to kill me," she'd scream, and look for a shoulder to lean on. Usually it was George Swift, the tour manager. I started calling him MR. Shoulder. It was always drama, the playmate and the rock star. As far as Gene and Paul were concerned, all they had to do was control Aces and my craziness and the band would continue to rake in the money. It was all about control. And in October, Gene and Paul learned, on national television, that Ace and I would no longer be controllable. We took a break from the tour to fly to New York to tape the Tomorrow Show with Tom Snyder. Doing shows like this usually intimidated Ace, so he started drinking champagne hours before the show. Hey, own name for everything. So we both started drinking water glasses full of bubbly. We emptied a bottle and Ace opened another one. Meanwhile, we were putting on our makeup. Paul was in front of his mirror, fluffing up his hair. He must have used at least 5 cans of Aquanet, the cheapest hairspray, before every show. I'm convinced that Paul alone is responsible for global warming. On the other side of the room, Gene was finishing his makeup and starting to make monster noises. He'd stare at himself in the mirror and Ace and I would look at each other and say, "Gene's going away." That's what we call his transformation. In the middle of this madness, Bill came in with a bottle of vodka. So Ace started gulping vodka along with the champagne. You can't mix vodka and champagne. By the time we walked out on that set, we were wobbly as hell. But we loved Tom Snyder. We felt like this was the ultimate. He was even cooler than Carson. So he started to ask us questions, and Ace all of a sudden picked up Tom's teddy bear that he kept on the set and started customizing it with his wristbands. "What are you doing to that teddy bear?" Tom asked. "It's a space bear now," Ace proclaimed. Tom was astonished that Ace was so lively. His producer had told him that he'd be lucky to get Ace to open his even mouth once. But Ace was drunk off his ass and he was hilarious, and Gene was getting more and more pissed off. At one point Tom asked us who our audience was, and Paul answered that he once looked out his hotel window and saw parents with kids in 20-year-olds and older people, all in line for our show. And if you saw our show in Bombay, you'd see cows in line too, Ace grabbed. The more Ace and I cut up, the more Gene was fuming. Every time Ace mentioned drugs, Gene quickly cut in, "He's kidding." Paul seemed really pissed off too. When Tom asked me what my hobbies were, I said that I had a gun collection. "Toy guns," Gene interjected. "No, I collect guns. I shoot them at a range. I'd never shoot an animal," I said. Then I said that gangsters fascinated me, and if I could go back in time I'd love to be Dillinger or Babyface Nelson. In the movies, Gene cut in. He was so concerned about one of us saying something real, something he couldn't control. Even Tom picked up on it. He turned to Gene. "So you're the guy who keeps it all straight." "He's the mother," I said. "He's the mother superior," Ace added, and we all cracked up. Except for Gene and Paul, who were fuming. Everybody's got a fantasy and we're all good guys. You know what I mean? Gene had to have the last word. "Tell me what you were doing at 4 this morning," Tom suddenly asked Ace. "No. I don't want to be arrested," he said, and we all cracked up. Except for Gene and Paul, of course. For the first time in his story, Ace and I had hijacked an interview from Gene and Paul, and the result was hilarious. When the show was over, Tom came back to our dressing room, but Ace had passed out on the couch. "Great show, guys," he said. "Everybody on the staff is still laughing." He shook our hands. "And tell Ace when he wakes up that I love him. He was great." Maybe the Tom Snyder appearance emboldened me, I don't know. But I certainly wasn't going to take the same shit I had taken for years from Gene and Paul. On December 8th in Shreveport, Paul humiliated me in front of the audience in the same way he had done many times before. That night, in front of a packed house, Paul turned toward me in the middle of a song and he lifted his arm in an exaggerated gesture to tell me to slow the tempo down. What that says to everybody in the arena is that I'm the one fucking up the band. He may have had a point. My coke dealer was at the show that night, and we were doing blow in my room before the show. So maybe he was right. I was a little edgy and probably playing a little too fast. But his exaggerated gesture was a slap in the face. And now he was waving with both hands, gesturing to slow it down. "You want it slow, you'll Get it slow, motherfucker, I said to myself, and I slowed the song down to a crawl. When I started slowing real down, he turned around again and faced me and gestured wildly with both arms, up, up, up. I'm like, make up your motherfucking mind. People in the audience could hear me screaming that at him. I just stopped playing. I didn't hear anymore, and Paul said, we're out of here, good night. We went back in the room and yelled back and forth for a few minutes, and then I think we went back out and did 2 numbers and left without a real encore. I was finished. He suggested we end the tour and go home. I refused to commit to any more shows until I talked to my lawyer. Then I told Paul that if he ever did that again, I would throw a drumstick at him so hard that it would go through the back of his fucking head and come out one of his eyes. The other guys were angry with me, but they both agreed that Paul was wrong, too. Peter's got a point, he said. You can't blame him in front of the whole audience. I shouldn't have sabotaged that song, but Paul could have easily waited, finished the show, and talked to me about it in the dressing room. I would have taken that fine. But the way he did it was so brilliant. He had to have everyone looking at him admonishing me. 2 nights later, at the next gig in Jackson, Mississippi, I stopped playing during move on and walked off the stage. I was just so fed up with them. The other 3 finished the song, and then we went backstage. When we went back on stage 15 minutes later, Paul made up some story that I had been hit in the eye with a fragment from a broken drumstick. Later that same show, after I finished singing back, I threw the mic on the floor and stormed off stage again. Things were just escalating. They reached a breaking point the next night in Biloxi. For years, when Gene or Paul would try to upstage me and stand in front of the drums and obscure me from the audience, I would throw a drumstick and hit them in the head. And they got the message and moved away. But I also used to throw sticks out to the audience as souvenirs. That night in Biloxi, I was throwing sticks out to the audience during our last song before the encores, and, on a whim, I decided to hit Gene with one. I didn't mean to hit him hard, but the thick end of the stick whacked him. He turned around and glared at me, but I just figured he was in his demonic state. When I got downstairs after the song and we were waiting to go back on, Gene came into the room and walked up to me and kicked me in the shin. And it hurt with those gigantic boots. I was in pain. You son of a bitch. I screamed. What was that all about? Don't ever throw a drumstick at me, Gene said. Gene, it was an accident, man. I didn't mean it, I fudged. I certainly didn't mean to hurt him. We went back on for the encore and my shin was throbbing. I got furious. I was plotting during the song how I was going to get back at Gene. Should I whack him immediately or hit him in the back when we were going back for the second encore? When the song was finished, I jumped off the drums and was the first one back into the room. I found one of Ace's empty champagne bottles and broke it against the table. As soon as Gene walked into that room, I went after him with the broken bottle, but some of the crew intervened and dragged me away. We managed to go back out and do the last encore. When we went back in the room after that song, Gene and I were glowering at each other. This is great, Paul said. Gene Simmons kicks the drummer of Kiss. Peter Criss kills Gene Simmons. Band over with, no more Kiss. We begrudgingly shook each other's hands, but I knew that was it. We had broken another cardinal rule of Kiss: you never hit each other. Sean had told us years ago that once you put your hands on one of your band members and physically attack him, it's over. Ace and I had known that years before. When we were just starting out, and we bonded and became closer after that incident. But now, with so many years between us, this was different, and there was no turning back. We finished the final 2 shows of the Dynasty tour without incident. But Kiss, as the world knew it, was over. mumbled to Neil Bogart. Maybe she's not gonna come. This conversation was taking place in the bathroom. Here, this will help you out, Neil said, and passed me a bottle of Coke. That conversation was repeated with Larry Harris, another Casablanca executive, and a few of my other friends. Each time I got the consolation prize of a bottle. And each time I had to chase that electric feeling with a nice scotch. After 2 hours, Deb finally showed up. By then I was high, but so was she. Her pupils were totally dilated and she was half in the bag. Where were you? I was with Eileen back at the bungalow, she said. I had rented a nice bungalow for us at the Beverly Hills Hotel. We opened a bottle of champagne and we found your flow, so we started doing it, she said. 3 bottles and a few grams later, it finally crossed their minds that Deb had a wedding to attend. I wasn't going to let a little tardiness spoil my big day. We had gone all out for this wedding. Chris laughed, who loved to do stuff like this, made all the arrangements, including getting a custom-made cake from one of the best patisseries in town. We began the festivities with a black tie pre-wedding dinner for 200 people at Ruggines in New York City. Once we got to Aldate, I passed on a bachelor party and instead had a dinner a few nights before the wedding at Chasen's, the legendary Hollywood restaurant. Chasen's was my ultimate spot, because Humphrey Bogart used to be a regular there. At one point in the evening I decided to do my Fred Astaire impression, so I took off my jacket and leaped up onto the table and danced. The food went everywhere, but I didn't care. I was living my Hollywood dream. The wedding itself was marred by an ugly incident involving my parents. I had seated my parents at a prime table in the front of the room. Deb and I were up on the dais. Between the salad and the main course, Deb's mother and her aunt, who had married a very prominent Beverly Hills dentist to the stars, came up and sat down with us. They were both pretty bombed and just stayed. They're drinking and bullshitting. Somehow this bothered my mother. How the fuck can they go sit up there and we can't? She fumed to my father. I could see that she was upset, so I went over to their table. What's the matter, Mom? This is bullshit. We're leaving, she said. Where are you going? I was in shock. I'd done everything to make my parents feel proud and special. I had put them up in the Beverly Hills Hotel in a nice suite. I wanted my folks to have fun, but fancy, schmancy places like El Orange made my mom nervous. She had bad teeth, so she always covered her mouth when she talked to important people. She and my dad were simple Brooklyn people. They felt out of place in this glitzy Aldate world. We're leaving. You're not going to insult me like this. Come on, Joe, she said, and got up. My father and grandfather and his wife sheepishly followed her out. My mother didn't talk to me for a year after that incident. This was probably my mother's way of not approving of the marriage. God knows, many of the people closest to me were horrified that I was marrying Deb. I should have realized that our relationship was incendiary from the start. We fought like cats and dogs. She would pull stunts like hanging naked from the balcony of my suite at L'Hermitage, drunk and coked out of her mind. I told my dad that story. What are you getting into? A naked woman hanging from a balcony. What's going to happen in the future? He warned. But pussy is like heroin.